So when it comes to Danganronpa 3, on the despair side for episode 2, they are definitely going to something major with the revelation that we got at the end of episode 2, where we saw Natsumi, what's her last name, Kuzuryu, because this girl right here, if you recognize that last name, she's actually related to Fuyuhiko because they obviously have the same last name. So that right there was like pretty major, and if you played the games, then you definitely know what's going to happen with this character. But at the same time, I don't recall her being a reserve student because we do know that she does have a talent, so you would think that, she'll be going to the main school or to the main building and not being a reserve corps student. Now that right there might have been revealed in Danganronpa 2, but I possibly forgot it. But I always thought that if you had like some kind of ability, then you'll definitely go to like the main school with like no questions asked. But with her and knowing her title, we know that that right there is not the case. So I do wonder like why that is. But regardless, the episode itself, it starts off with Chisa, and we do learn that some time has passed since the first episode, and in fact it's been like 2 weeks now if you look back at that calendar that she was marking up. And we do learn that since the first day that all these students, they had either been coming to class on their own or she has like gone to get them. But we see now that those circles represent where she had a full attendance. And so right now we see that the teacher, or a main course teacher who should be teaching them, like he is for some reason like skipping out on this class. And we do learn now that if these students, like cause a problem for like any teacher, then they will be sent to teach the reserve, course students. And for some reason, like, we have the guy treating that as some huge thing, like it's bad. But then we see that while they were talking, we see now that she actually got this phone call, and it was like some teacher, telling her to come to the class because something was like obviously going on. And we see now that when she looked up after being on the phone, we saw that the main course guy, he was like long gone. And so we see now that when she went to the classroom, we have Akane and Nekomaru. These two were like fighting, and we see now that while they were fighting, there was nothing but the structure in their path, because we saw that the classroom, that right there was like pretty much destroyed. And we even have like part of the wall that was now gone, and you can see outside. So obviously these two, they were not holding back. And obviously we have Nekomaru like having the upper hand, because we saw Akane kind of like roughed up, where Nekomaru really had no injuries like whatsoever. And so right now we have Teru like bringing out this metal case, and we see inside he had like these two things of soup. One was green and the other one was pink. And we see now that when he gave Akane this green soup, it was a doping soup, so it had drugs in it. And we see now that when they took effect in her body, we saw her like bulking up, but at the same time we could like see all these veins like popping up as well. So pretty much she was like taking like steroids, because obviously that right there is like one of their effects. So it's definitely not hard to tell what kind of drugs this was. But we see her now bulking up, and even though she was not Sakura's level, she was definitely, getting there if she maybe took like one more. But we see her now freaking huge, but at the same time, she was like a lot more powerful and stronger. And we see her now kind of like forcing like Nekomaru back. And then we have Chanami. Like we have her playing the game, and then she like got up and left. I mean, Chiaki, my bad. We got Chiaki. She was like playing the game, and then we see her getting up and leaving. And so when she left, we get like this little scene where we have Nagito, and we see him now just sitting there, and you see like all these school supplies like just flying past his head. And with his luck, none of them were actually hitting him. So this guy was like just sitting there smiling like somebody crazy. But then we see that where we have Chiaki going outside, we also have the ultimate imposter also, sitting outside as well. And we saw him like drawing something, because right now he's impersonating being the ultimate, what's called ultimate oh my god, what can I say it? Animator, there we go. And so right now, Chiaki was like that this class, they aren't really like being united or like working together. And so right now we have the imposters saying that, they all have these talents, and when they graduate, like they'll be all set. And so they pretty much have they have no trial that requires them to like work together and possibly, like unite. And so right now we have Chiaki saying that that her talent or games, they won't get her any friends. And then we have Chisa coming out there saying that that she's wrong. And then we have her questioning just how much value does Chiaki have in her games. And so right now we see that when she was alone, we have Chisa actually contacting what's this guy's name? Koyosuke, something like that. But pretty much he was the former, super high level ultimate president. And so right now we see she was like telling him that the school, they are getting a ton of funds from the reserve corps students, but they have no idea what this funding is for. And so right now she plans on looking into that, while this guy is actually like building his own school like overseas, because he was saying that if he does this, then that right there will make his opinion or get him a greater voice when it comes to such things, because they definitely want to know what these higher ups are actually planning. And so right now, I definitely believe that this structure that we see him building, that right there does become the future foundation like building that we saw at Danganronpa 3 on the future side, because I believe that right there is on the same island, but I'm not really sure. But regardless, these two are definitely working on kind of like exposing like the higher ups and pretty much trying to see what they're doing. But then we see that after she was like done, talking to him, we now have Mahiru, like in the halls coming to her saying that that the students, they were looking for her, and right now she was actually going to go like eat lunch with her friend who's actually in the reserve course, and that friend also plays a role like in the game as well. And so this friend name, I believe, is Sato. But obviously we have not seen her yet, but we just know that her friend was now brought into the story. And then where we have Chisa going back to the class, we see now that Chiaki has definitely like used her brains and is actually like using her games to bring her class together. And so we see now that what's his name, the ultimate mechanic, what's his name, crap, what is his name? Come on, right there, tip of my tongue. Crap, what is his name? But regardless, now we have the ultimate mechanic. He actually built it. Oh, there we go, Soda. He actually built this like very large monitor, and we see now that Chiaki, she had all the games they could play, and one of them were like Monopoly, where we have the boys playing it. And we see that with Nagito's luck, he actually got all these free moves, like 60 free moves, and all this money. And then we see now that Soda, he actually went flat broke, and we see him now being like negative. And to me, that right there was hilarious. But we saw so many game parodies, like we had Monopoly, we had Smash Bros, we have Bomberman, and we even have Mario Kart. Like, just so many game parodies. And to me, that right there was like freaking great. I definitely, give them props for doing that. And so pretty much now, Chisa definitely brought the class together. And to me, that right there was like very nice. And then we have Teru, who had made like some kind of soup. And we see now that all our characters, they were eating it. And then we have Hiyoko, this little shit, this freaking bitch, man. I swear to God, like we have her because during the scrimmage between Nekomaru and Akame in the beginning, that other soup actually got rolled toward Hiyoko, and we see her now taking that, and we have her pouring that soup into what Teru was like making, and apparently that right there was like some sexy soup. and we see it now affecting like all our characters. Like we have Akane and Nekomaru like in all lovey-dovey, and I gotta say, like hearing like Nekomaru's like inner voice and seeing it be like a lot, well, like higher than his like regular voice, like that was kind of funny. But these two characters, especially like the way they are close in the game, you know, people do pair them, and so seeing them seeing them acting all like lovey-dovey, to me that right there did make sense. Like we have Mahiru taking like some seductive pictures with her camera. Like we see now that Hiyoko, she was like messing with Teru, and this guy was like definitely holding what was between his legs, because you could tell that it was like definitely affecting him. Another character who really got affected was what's her name? Mikan. Like we saw her go to Peka Peku, and we see her now wanting to like borrow her sword, and she was saying now just a tip. And I'm pretty sure, you know, I'm pretty sure it's like easy to tell what she wanted it for, obviously. And then we have Gundam, whose arm was like bothering him. We have Sonya, who also was like feeling the effects, and we have Soda, who kept trying to like go to her, and we see him now pulling down his little jumpsuit. But then we have what's the name? The Ultimate Yakuza. Oh, there we go. Fuyuhiko. He was like going to him and stopping him, and we see now that that also Chiza, she was feeling the effects as well, but she was not acting wild like her student was. But then we see that like Teru, he like we saw like the crazy look appear in his eyes, and he was approaching what's her name, Hiyoko. And we see now that this right here was like definitely, you know, not a good sign, because she was saying how she had, he was saying how she had awoken something that was like in him. And then out of nowhere, we have Chiaki actually uppercut the mess out of him, bro. That what's it called? The heavenly like soaring dragon, like something like that. But regardless now, man, that freaking uppercut was insane. Like we have him go flying, and back in Danganronpa 2, you know, Teru, you know, always like yelled out like these real world references, and the one he did in the episode was like Taylor Swift, and to me that right there had me dying, man. That scene was freaking awesome. I give Chiaki like major props for that. And we see now that, you know, that after she punched him, she was saying, you know, don't touch her classmates, but at the same time, he is also one of her classmates as well. And so to me that was funny. Like we get this scene where they're in the nurse's office or the infirmary, and we have Chiaki, you know, telling them a story about where she got that move from, and that right there was like from a game called Double Dragon 2, and they all knew that, and well, some of them knew that, and so there was this one scene like during their break time where we had Chisa going out, and we see her coming across Hajime, and so right now she was like questioning him, you know, asking him why is he like wasting his break alone, you know, like trying to find out more about the reserve student course. And so right now, you know, even though this guy does not have a talent or not an ultimate, it is definitely nice to see that Chisa is kind of like looking out for him, even though she is someone using him to get like information about the course. And we see now that the older guy from a future side, he's actually an advisor for the school, but more importantly, he also works for like the reserve student course. So I do wonder if this guy, you know, being a teacher, if he's like some regular Joe, or maybe this guy does have like some ultimate talent as well. But regardless, now him and Hajime does seem like rather friendly because they were talking. And then we see now that close to the end of the episode, we see that Chisa had picked their like class rep, because early on she was saying that they needed one. And so right now, because of how Chiaki acted and brought their class together, you know, like no one was more perfect than her. and we see now how everyone had agreed to that. And then we have Nagito's like creepy, like crazy side, kind of leaking out, because we saw him going on how with Chiaki and them, she would like lead their class to like a brighter future and all that. And we see now that everyone was like looking at him like this guy wasn't a straight up creep. And so pretty much at the end of the episode, we see now, or early on, that like when we saw the reserve student course, like we saw the characters, wearing the uniform, and they all had like these blue heads. And so we see now that when they animated them, they kind of went that cheap route where they did not fully animate them, because we saw now that the blue skin will be how they are, represented. But at the same time, it made sense because they are not that important. And so the only one that we do see that is fully animated is Hajime, and we see now that Chiaki, she was now waiting for him. And apparently there's like some new fighting game that's out, and we see her now inviting him to come play it. Well, he was like turning him down because he was bad at it, but Chiaki was like, come on. And we see her grabbing his hand because she was saying, games are fun when you play together. And just seeing that smile at the end, that right there is a smile you like definitely want to protect. And so we see now that that after the ending, we get this other scene, that I mentioned in the beginning, where we have Hajime in class, and we see now that another reserve corps student who is fully animated is this new girl, Natsumi Kuzuru. And so right now you can tell that this girl is extremely bitchy, because you can tell from the way her face was, and definitely how she talks. So that right there really might rub people. Really might rub people the wrong way, but at the same time, you definitely know she's important because she did not get that blue skin treatment, and not to mention, they actually bothered, showing her. So if you have not played the games, then you are definitely in for a treat with this character, because she actually does play a major role in the story. Because obviously I'm not going to ruin it now, but when it does happen, and if you have not played the games, you will definitely find out. But if you have played the games and you do know, then I definitely want to ask, how do you feel about seeing this character, animated? And of course, are you looking forward to seeing her events animated in the anime compared to the game, where we got like some old fashioned, like what we got, some old fashioned PS1 style looking game compared to this? But regardless, let me know what you guys thought. As usual, this the spare side, to me, it is definitely looking promising, because just seeing our character interact, and not to mention that they are going like this extra mile to cover everything, I definitely applaud that. And also, just so you guys know, both the future and the spare side, they are both 12 episodes long each, so obviously we are definitely in for quite a bit. But of course, don't forget to like and subscribe, because it really helps me out. And as always, you guys take it easy, and I will see you all next time.